The airlock hissed open and Kyle Morrison stepped onto Unity Prime for the first time. The docking bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold 100 ships the size of the horizon. Vessels from dozens of different species lined the walls, each one unique in design and purpose. Some looked like living organisms. Others were pure geometric shapes that hurt to look at. Waiting for them was a creature unlike anything Kyle had ever imagined. It stood nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms, blue-green skin, and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on its face. The being wore flowing robes marked with symbols that glowed faintly. "Greetings, human delegation. I am Vrex, Protocol Officer for the Galactic Council. I will guide you through the process of your presentation." The creature's voice came from a translator device hanging around its neck. The words were in perfect English, but there was a slight delay between the movement of its mouth and the sound. Kyle bowed slightly, a gesture of respect. "Thank you, Vrex. We are honored to be here." Vrex led them through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were transparent in places, showing the void of space beyond. Other times they displayed images of alien worlds, beautiful and strange. Lisa tried to take in everything at once, her scientific mind cataloging every detail. Unity Prime was built 12,000 years ago, Vrex explained as they walked. It exists at the gravitational center point of 12 solar systems, making it the perfect neutral ground for council meetings. Over 4,000 species maintain permanent embassies here. Jake kept his hand near his sidearm, though he knew it would be useless if things went wrong. His tactical mind was already mapping escape routes and counting potential threats. There were dozens of different aliens in the corridors, each one potentially hostile. They took an elevator that traveled for what felt like hours. When the doors finally opened, they entered a massive spherical chamber. It was the most impressive thing Kyle had ever seen. Seats were arranged in rings that curved around the interior of the sphere, each level representing a different tier of power and influence. At the very center, floating on platforms that defied gravity, were 10 elaborate thrones. "The council chamber," Vrex announced. "The lower rings seat species of minimal influence. As you rise toward the center, power increases. The 10 seats at the core belong to the most powerful members of the Galactic Council." Kyle could see that most of the seats were already filled. Thousands of aliens watched as the human delegation entered. Some looked curious, others bored, and a few seemed openly hostile. The humans were the newest species to receive an invitation in over 2 centuries, and not everyone was happy about it. Vrex guided them to a small platform near the middle rings. "You will observe from here while I provide information about the top 10 members. It is important that you understand who holds power in the galaxy." The lights in the chamber dimmed. Holographic displays appeared around the central thrones, showing information about each member. Vrex began the briefing, and Kyle listened carefully to every word. "At position 10, we have Representative Cora of the Mindshare Collective." A hologram showed a being that seemed to be made of pure thought, shifting and changing constantly. "The collective is a hive mind spanning 300 star systems. They control the flow of information across the galaxy. Every communication network, every database, every piece of knowledge passes through systems they monitor. Their power lies in knowing everything that happens," Lisa whispered to Kyle. "They're basically the galaxy's intelligence agency." Vrex continued. "Position 9 belongs to Warlord Krax of the Vryn Empire." The hologram shifted to show a massive creature covered in dark armor, with 6 limbs and a head that resembled a predatory insect. The Vryn maintain the largest standing military force in known space. Their fleet consists of over 1 million warships. They have conquered more territory than any other species in the last 1,000 years. When the Council needs military force, they turn to the Vryn. Jake studied the image carefully. He had commanded fleets, but nothing compared to the scale Vrex was describing. 1 million warships. Earth had barely 50 combat-capable vessels. At position 8 is Trade Prince Ven of the Aurelian Commerce Guild. A golden-skinned humanoid appeared in the hologram, covered in jewels and fine clothing. "The Aurelians control 40% of all interstellar trade. If you want to buy or sell anything across the galaxy, you deal with them. They have the economic power to cripple entire civilizations through sanctions and embargoes. Planets live or die based on their decisions." Kyle nodded slowly. "Economic warfare could be just as devastating as military conflict. Sometimes more so." Position 7 is held by High Scientist Mara of the Lanthian Ascendancy. The hologram showed a tall, slender being with silver skin and large black eyes. The Lanthians are masters of biotechnology. They have developed treatments that can extend life indefinitely. Species across the galaxy owe them debts that will take centuries to repay. When you control life and death, you control everything. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity's average lifespan was barely 80 years. These beings could live forever. Vrex gestured to the sixth throne. Guardian Thane of the Sentinel Order holds this position. The Sentinels are peacekeepers who protect weaker species from aggression. They maintain massive defensive platforms around endangered worlds. Their moral authority and military capability make them respected across the galaxy. They fight only to defend, never to conquer, which gives them tremendous political power. Jake appreciated that. An organization dedicated to protection rather than domination was rare in any government, let alone one spanning the galaxy. At position 5, we have Archonzile of the Dominion. A being made entirely of metal appeared in the hologram, more machine than organic. The Dominion is a technocracy that has mastered artificial intelligence and automated warfare. They can deploy drone armies anywhere in the galaxy within days. Their computational power exceeds that of all other species combined. Kyle frowned. Artificial intelligence had always been controversial on Earth. Seeing a civilization built entirely around it was unsettling. Position 4 belongs to Matriarch Sarah of the Elysian Federation. The hologram showed a graceful being with features that reminded Kyle of classical human art, beautiful and serene. The Elysians possess limited precognitive abilities. They can see possible futures and use this gift to mediate conflicts. Every major peace treaty in the last 200 years was negotiated by Matriarch Sarah personally. Her diplomatic skill is unmatched. Lisa leaned closer. Precognition? Is that even possible? Apparently, Kyle murmured. Vrex continued to the third position. Emperor Vaxon of the Star Throne. An ancient being appeared, so old that its features were hard to distinguish. The Star Throne is the oldest continuous civilization in the galaxy. They have existed for over 40 million years. Their knowledge and cultural influence shapes galactic society itself. When Vaxon speaks, the galaxy listens, because his people were ancient when most current species were still primitive. The weight of 40 million years pressed down on Kyle. How could humanity, barely 10,000 years old as a civilization, compete with that kind of history? Position 2 is held by Overmind Nexus of the Silicon Collective. The hologram showed a network of glowing lights rather than a physical form. The collective consists entirely of synthetic beings who control the most advanced computational networks in existence. They can predict economic trends, social movements, and even the outcomes of wars with frightening accuracy. They claim to calculate probability with 99% accuracy. Jake didn't like the sound of that. An enemy who could predict your moves before you made them was nearly impossible to defeat. Finally, Vrex gestured to the first throne, which sat empty. And at the pinnacle of power, holding position 1 is Oracle Prime of the Celestial Order. Unlike the others, no hologram appeared. Instead, the space around the throne seemed to shimmer and bend. Oracle Prime has transcended physical form. They exist as pure energy and claim to perceive multiple timelines simultaneously. In 15,000 years, Oracle Prime has never made an incorrect prediction about major galactic events. Their guidance has prevented countless wars and disasters. The chamber fell silent as Vrex finished the briefing. Kyle looked at Lisa and Jake. Both of them wore expressions of concern mixed with awe. These weren't just powerful civilizations, they were forces of nature, each one capable of reshaping the galaxy according to their will. Now you understand the structure of power, Vrex said. The top 10 have earned their positions through demonstrated superiority. Military might, economic control, ancient wisdom, technological advancement, moral authority, predictive ability. Each represents a different path to power. Kyle took a deep breath. And where does that leave humanity? Vrex's 3 eyes focused on him. That is what you must demonstrate. The Council will hear your presentation. You must convince them that humanity deserves a place among the stars. Be warned, Ambassador Morrison. Many species come before the Council believing they are special, that they have something unique to offer. Most leave disappointed, ranked among the thousands of minor civilizations with little influence. A few earn respect and rise through the ranks over centuries. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the Aurora, watching the stars streak past the view screen. His ship was the pride of humanity, the first vessel capable of traveling faster than light. After 200 years of dreaming about the stars, humans had finally broken free from their solar system. The mission was simple. Explore nearby star systems, map new worlds, and search for signs of alien life. For 3 months, they had found nothing but empty planets and silent space. Daniel was beginning to wonder if humanity was alone in the universe. Lieutenant Sophie Marshall sat at the communication station, monitoring radio frequencies and scanning for any unusual signals. She had been doing this job for weeks without finding anything interesting. But today, something changed. "Captain, I'm picking up a transmission," Sophie said, her voice filled with excitement. "It's not natural. Someone is broadcasting on multiple frequencies." Daniel moved closer to her station. "Can you tell where it's coming from?" Sophie worked quickly, her fingers dancing across the controls. "There's a structure about 2 million kilometers away. It looks like some kind of relay station. The signal is strong and repeating. Can you decode it?" Daniel asked. "Working on it now," Sophie replied. She ran the signal through the ship's computer, trying different translation algorithms. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then suddenly the computer beeped. "Captain, you need to see this." Daniel read the decoded message on the screen. His eyes widened with each word. The message was an official summons from something called the Galactic Council. It explained that humanity had been watched for centuries, ever since humans first started using radio waves. Now that Earth had developed faster than light travel, humans were being invited to present themselves to the Council. "This is real," Daniel whispered. "We're not alone." He immediately ordered the crew to change course toward the relay station. As they approached, they could see it more clearly. The structure was ancient, covered in strange symbols and built from materials that human science couldn't identify. It hung in space like a monument to civilizations far older than humanity. Sophie continued reading the message. "Captain, there's more information here. The Galactic Council isn't just a meeting place. It's a government that controls thousands of species across the galaxy. They have rules, laws, and a power structure." "What kind of power structure?" Daniel asked. "According to this, the Council ranks its members based on their strength and influence. The top 10 members have the most power. They make all the important decisions about trade, warfare, and galactic law." Sophie paused, looking worried. "Captain, some of these species have been spacefaring for millions of years. How can we possibly compete with that?" Daniel didn't have an answer. He sent the message back to Earth using the ship's quantum communicator. Within hours, every government on the planet knew about the Galactic Council. Within days, the world was in an uproar. Humanity had finally found alien life, and it was far more advanced than anyone had imagined. The United Earth government worked quickly. They assembled a team of the best diplomats, scientists, and military officers humanity had to offer. Leading the delegation was Ambassador Kyle Morrison, a man who had spent 30 years negotiating peace treaties and trade agreements between Earth's nations. If anyone could represent humanity to the galaxy, it was him. Kyle was in his office when he received the call. He was 57 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He had dealt with difficult negotiations before, but nothing could have prepared him for this. "Ambassador Morrison, we need you for the most important mission in human history," the Secretary General told him over the video call. "You'll be representing our entire species to advanced alien civilizations. Are you ready for this?" Kyle took a deep breath. "I'll do my best, but I'll need the right people with me." The government gave him freedom to choose his team. Kyle selected Dr. Lisa Cameron, a brilliant scientist who had spent her career studying the possibility of alien life. She was young, only 32, but her mind was sharp and she could explain complex ideas in simple terms. If they encountered alien technology or biology, Lisa would understand it. Kyle also chose Commander Jake Sullivan, a tactical genius from Earth's Space Defense Force. Jake was 41 and had commanded missions in every corner of the solar system. He was calm under pressure and could think 3 steps ahead of any opponent. If the aliens proved hostile, Jake would know how to protect the delegation. The 3 of them met for the first time in a secure briefing room. Kyle explained what they knew so far, which wasn't much. The Galactic Council existed. It had rules, and humanity needed to convince them that Earth deserved a place among the stars. "What do we know about the other species?" Lisa asked. "Very little," Kyle admitted. The message mentioned that power determines rank. The top 10 members control everything, but we don't know who they are or what makes them powerful. Jake leaned forward. Then we need to find out. We can't walk into negotiations blind. We need intelligence, Kyle agreed. They spent the next 3 weeks preparing. They studied every piece of information from the relay station. They practiced diplomatic scenarios. They learned basic xenopsychology, trying to understand how alien minds might work. But mostly they worried about what they would find. Finally, the day came. The delegation boarded the diplomatic shuttle Horizon, a sleek vessel designed to look impressive but not threatening. Captain Daniel Hayes piloted them away from Earth, heading toward the coordinates provided in the message. The journey took 2 weeks. During that time, Kyle, Lisa, and Jake went over their strategy again and again. They knew they couldn't compete with species that had millions of years of history. They couldn't match the technology of civilizations that had been exploring space since before humans learned to make fire. Their only advantage was being unknown. The galaxy didn't know what humanity was capable of, and Kyle intended to use that uncertainty. As they traveled through hyperspace, the computer finally decoded more information from the relay station. It contained files on the current top 10 members of the Galactic Council. Kyle read through them with growing concern. The 10th most powerful member was a hive mind that controlled information across hundreds of worlds. The 9th was a warrior empire with the largest military in the galaxy. The 8th controlled almost half of all trade between the stars. Each member of the top 10 had achieved their position through overwhelming superiority in one area. How do we compete with this? Lisa asked, reading over his shoulder. Kyle stared at the files for a long time before answering. We don't compete on their terms. We find our own path. Humanity survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We've nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times and always found a way forward. That has to count for something. Jake nodded slowly. Adaptability. That's our strength. We change faster than anyone else. Exactly, Kyle said. These civilizations are powerful, but they're also old. Old systems become rigid. They stop changing because they don't need to. We're still learning, still growing. That makes us unpredictable. The Horizon dropped out of hyperspace near Unity Prime, the station where the Galactic Council met. Kyle, Lisa, and Jake pressed against the viewports, staring at the massive structure before them. It was bigger than Earth's moon, a perfect sphere covered in lights and docking ports. Thousands of ships moved around it like insects around a hive. Welcome to the center of galactic civilization, Daniel said from the pilot's seat. As they approached, a message came through in perfect English. Human delegation, you are cleared for docking at Bay 742. A protocol officer will meet you and escort you to the council chambers. Welcome to Unity Prime. Kyle felt his heart racing. This was it. Humanity's first real contact with the galaxy. Everything they did from this moment forward would determine Earth's future among the stars. He stood up straight, adjusting his formal uniform. Remember, he told his team, we're not here to conquer or dominate. We're here to prove that humanity deserves a seat at the table. Let's show them what we're made of. The shuttle docked with a soft thud. The airlock opened, and humanity stepped forward into a galaxy that would never be the same. The hour passed too quickly. Kyle Morrison stood on the platform, watching as the council chamber filled with representatives from thousands of worlds. The noise was overwhelming, a mixture of languages and sounds that the translator couldn't fully process. Some species communicated through light, others through chemical signals, and a few in ways that humans couldn't even detect. A deep tone echoed through the chamber, and silence fell immediately. The 10 thrones at the center began to glow. One by one, the most powerful beings in the galaxy appeared. Kyle watched as each took their seat. The massive form of Warlord Krax, the shimmering presence of Trade Prince Ven, the ancient Emperor Vaxon, and finally, the space around the first throne began to distort as Oracle Prime manifested. The Oracle's voice came from everywhere and nowhere at once. We gather to hear from a new species. Humanity has achieved faster-than-light travel and seeks admission to the Galactic Council. Step forward, Ambassador Kyle Morrison of Earth. Kyle felt thousands of eyes on him as he walked to the center of the chamber. Lisa and Jake followed close behind, carrying data devices with humanity's presentation. The platform beneath his feet lifted him closer to the 10 thrones, but he still felt impossibly small. Ambassador Morrison, Oracle Prime continued. Humanity arrives late to the galactic stage. Countless species achieved space travel millions of years before your kind learned to make fire. What can you offer that has not already been achieved by your elders? Why should the council grant you membership? Kyle had practiced this moment 100 times. He knew that his next words would echo through human history forever. He took a breath and began. Oracle Prime, members of the council, I stand before you not to claim that humanity is superior, but to offer something that I believe has become rare in this ancient galaxy. We offer the perspective of a young species that has survived against impossible odds. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Kyle continued quickly. Every civilization represented here achieved power through a dominant strength, military force, economic control, ancient knowledge, technological superiority. These are all worthy paths, but humanity took a different road. We survived through adaptation. Lisa stepped forward and activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared, showing its history. Ice ages that should have killed early humans. Plagues that wiped out millions. Wars that nearly destroyed the entire planet. In just 10,000 years of recorded history, humanity faced extinction dozens of times. Kyle explained. We had no natural advantages. We weren't the strongest creatures on our world. We weren't the fastest or the largest. But we learned to adapt. When the climate changed, we changed with it. When disease struck, we developed medicine. When we created weapons capable of destroying ourselves, we learned control. Warlord Krax's voice boomed from his throne. You speak of surviving conflicts among yourselves as if it were an achievement. Internal warfare proves weakness, not strength. A united species is a powerful species. Kyle had expected this challenge. With respect, Warlord, our diversity is not a weakness. Earth has hundreds of cultures, thousands of languages, and millions of different perspectives. We have learned to cooperate despite our differences. This makes us flexible in ways that homogeneous civilizations cannot match. Commander Jake Sullivan activated another display. It showed human military history. From ancient battles to modern space warfare, our conflicts taught us innovation. Every defeat forced us to develop new tactics. We learned that superior force doesn't always win. Strategy, creativity, and the willingness to try unconventional approaches often defeat larger armies. Trade Prince Ven spoke next, his voice smooth and calculating. Adaptation is admirable, but what of resources? What wealth does humanity bring to the galactic economy? Your planet has basic metals and simple organic compounds. You have nothing we need. Lisa answered this time. Our wealth isn't in resources, it's in ideas. Human scientists, artists, and philosophers produce more creative output per capita than any species in the Council's database. We create because we must. Our short lifespans give us urgency. We innovate rapidly because we don't have millions of years to develop solutions. She brought up statistics comparing human cultural output to other species. The numbers were striking. In just 300 years of industrial civilization, humans had produced more art, music, literature, and scientific papers than some species had in 10,000 years. High Scientist Mira of the Lanthian Ascendancy leaned forward, her black eyes studying Lisa carefully. Your innovation is interesting, but your biology is primitive. Your lifespans barely reach 1 century. You die before you can accumulate real wisdom. How can you negotiate with beings who will outlive your entire diplomatic corps? Lisa met her gaze without flinching. We have something you may have forgotten, High Scientist. We have urgency. When you have unlimited time, research can wait. Projects can take centuries. But humans innovate rapidly because we must. In the time it takes your people to design a long-term study, we will try 100 different approaches. 90 will fail, but 10 will succeed. That ratio works because we act quickly. Emperor Vaxon spoke for the first time, his ancient voice heavy with the weight of ages. You claim to offer new perspectives, yet you know nothing of the galaxy's history. You are children playing with toys you don't understand. Wisdom comes from experience, and you have none. Kyle nodded respectfully. You're right, Emperor. We are young and inexperienced. But sometimes fresh eyes see solutions that experience misses. When you've done things the same way for millions of years, you stop questioning whether there might be a better approach. We question everything because we haven't learned to accept limitations yet. The debate continued for hours. Each member of the top 10 challenged humanity's worthiness. Kyle, Lisa, and Jake answered every question, defended every point, and refused to back down. They showed human achievements in medicine, engineering, art, and philosophy. They demonstrated tactical simulations that impressed even Warlord Krax. But Kyle could sense that words alone wouldn't be enough. The council had heard impressive presentations before. They needed to see something that proved humanity's unique value. Oracle Prime seemed to sense this too. The chamber fell silent as the being's presence intensified. "You speak well, Ambassador Morrison, but words are cheap. I will give you one final test. Solve this puzzle and humanity will be granted council membership. Fail, and Earth will remain isolated for another century." A holographic puzzle appeared in the center of the chamber. It was impossibly complex, combining quantum mechanics, four-dimensional geometry, and xenopsychology in ways that hurt Kyle's brain to look at. The puzzle required understanding of sciences that humanity had barely begun to explore. Lisa studied it for several seconds, her face going pale. "This is impossible. It requires 3 different cognitive frameworks that no single species could possess. It's designed to be unsolvable," Jake agreed. "It's a trap. No matter what answer we give, it will be wrong." Kyle stared at the puzzle for exactly 12 seconds. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the chamber. He turned his back on the puzzle and walked away from the center platform. He headed directly toward the viewing galleries where other species waited for their own hearings. "Ambassador, what are you doing?" Jake called after him. Kyle didn't answer. He approached a delegate from the Threen species, mathematical geniuses known for their computational abilities. "Excuse me, would you be willing to help humanity solve a problem?" The Threen delegate looked confused but nodded. Kyle then walked to a Porvan artist, a species that perceived the universe through aesthetic patterns. "We need your unique perspective. Will you help us?" The Porvan agreed, curious about what was happening. Finally, Kyle approached a Cleth engineer, famous for their practical approach to impossible problems. "One more perspective would be helpful. Join us?" The Cleth followed Kyle back to the center platform. Now 5 beings stood before the puzzle, each from a different species with different ways of thinking. Kyle divided the problem into sections, assigning each part to the being best suited to solve it. The Threen handled the quantum calculations. The Porvan identified patterns in the 4-dimensional geometry. The Cleth found practical solutions to the structural problems. Lisa worked on the xenopsychology aspects, and Kyle coordinated their efforts, combining their separate solutions into a unified answer. The chamber watched in stunned silence. 20 minutes later, they presented their solution to Oracle Prime. The being's presence brightened, filling the chamber with light. "Remarkable. You did not attempt to prove human superiority. Instead, you demonstrated humanity's true strength, the ability to unite different perspectives toward a common goal." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some aliens seemed impressed, others angry that Kyle had broken the implicit rules of the test. Matriarch Sarah of the Elysian Federation spoke, her voice carrying approval. "The ambassador understood what we old civilizations have forgotten. Power is not only found in individual strength, but in the ability to build bridges between different minds." Guardian Thane added his voice. "The Sentinel Order recognizes courage and wisdom when we see it. Humanity may be young, but they understand cooperation in ways that benefit the galaxy." 5 years after the buffer zone crisis, the galaxy looked very different. Humanity controlled 15 colony worlds and maintained defense agreements with 43 species. Human culture spread rapidly through younger civilizations who saw Earth as proof that newcomers could challenge the old order. Human movies, music, and philosophy became popular across hundreds of worlds. The top 10 rankings had begun to shift for the first time in living memory. Several species who held their positions for centuries found themselves challenged by rising powers. The galaxy was changing, and not everyone was happy about it. Kyle Morrison stood in his private office overlooking Unity Prime's main plaza. At 62 years old, he showed signs of age, but Lanthian medical treatments kept him healthy and sharp. He would live for centuries now, long enough to see humanity's full integration into galactic society. His assistant brought disturbing news. "Ambassador, we're detecting unusual activity from Overmind Nexus. They've been funding opposition movements in human colony regions. Anti-human propaganda is spreading through several sectors." Kyle wasn't surprised. Overmind Nexus, the Silicon Collective holding second position, had opposed humanity from the beginning. They viewed humans as chaotic elements that disrupted their carefully calculated predictions. They preferred a galaxy that followed predictable patterns. "How bad is it?" Kyle asked. 3 colonies have reported protests. Nothing violent yet, but the rhetoric is getting aggressive. They're calling humans upstarts and warmongers despite our humanitarian record. Kyle sighed. Let me guess, Emperor Vaxin is also involved? His representatives have been making speeches about the importance of traditional authority. He's not directly attacking us, but the message is clear. Old civilizations deserve respect that young ones haven't earned. The tension had been building for years. Humanity's rapid rise threatened established powers. Species that spent millennia climbing to their positions watched humans achieve in years what took them centuries. Resentment was inevitable. The council session that afternoon was tense from the start. The agenda included resource allocation for frontier development. Kyle proposed opening previously restricted sectors to colonization by newer species. These regions had been closed for thousands of years, protected by ancient regulations. Emperor Vaxin opposed the measure immediately. His ancient form seemed to radiate disapproval. These regions contain artifacts and dangers that young species cannot comprehend. The protocols exist to protect you from yourselves. You would unleash forces better left undisturbed. Kyle responded carefully. Emperor, with greatest respect, protocols that never change become chains. The galaxy has new challenges that old solutions cannot address. Perhaps it's time to trust that younger species have learned from your wisdom while bringing fresh perspectives. Fresh perspectives? Vaxin's voice carried contempt. You have existed as a spacefaring species for barely a decade. My civilization was ancient when your world was still cooling from its formation. Do not lecture me about wisdom. The debate grew heated. Other species took sides. Some supported opening the frontier, seeing opportunity for expansion. Others feared change and sided with Vaxin. The chamber divided along generational lines, young versus old, new versus ancient. Matriarch Sarah attempted to mediate, but even her diplomatic skills couldn't bridge the widening gap. The vote failed. The frontier remained closed. Kyle returned to his office frustrated. Humanity had proven itself repeatedly, but old prejudices died hard. How many more crises would they have to solve before they were truly accepted? The answer came sooner than expected. Oracle Prime requested an emergency council session. When every member had gathered, the being's presence filled the chamber with unusual intensity. Something important was happening. Members of the council, I have guided this galaxy for 15,000 years. I have prevented wars, mediated conflicts, and helped you navigate countless crises. But my time is ending. Shocked silence filled the chamber. Oracle Prime had always existed. The idea of their departure was unthinkable. I have observed every possible timeline. In some, I continue to guide you and the galaxy stagnates. In others, I step aside and you forge your own path. Those timelines show the most growth, the most progress. Even though they contain more uncertainty, the being's form began to fade slightly. The galaxy must learn to make its own decisions without relying on a singular vision of the future. For this reason, I am stepping down from first position. My era of guidance ends today. Chaos erupted. Delegates shouted questions. The top 10 members looked stunned. For 15,000 years, Oracle Prime had been the ultimate authority. Without them, who would lead? Oracle Prime's voice cut through the noise. I make one final recommendation before I depart. I nominate humanity to compete for first position. The chamber exploded with protests and support in equal measure. The idea was insane. Humanity had been on the council for less than a decade. How could they possibly lead the galaxy? Kyle stood slowly, his heart pounding. This couldn't be happening. Humanity wasn't ready for this responsibility. They were still learning basic galactic politics. Oracle Prime, Kyle said, his voice carrying through the chamber. We are deeply honored, but we must respectfully decline. Humanity is not ready to hold first position. We have too much to learn. Oracle Prime's presence brightened. That wisdom is precisely why you are qualified. Every species currently in the top 10 sought power for its own sake. They climbed the ranks to increase their influence, their territory, their control. You are the first to recognize that leadership is a responsibility, not a prize. Matriarch Sarah spoke up, her voice thoughtful. Oracle Prime makes a valid point, but perhaps a compromise would serve better. Rather than competing for first position immediately, humanity should be granted entry to the top 10. Give them time to prove themselves at that level. Guardian Thane agreed. The Sentinel Order supports this approach. Humanity has demonstrated moral courage repeatedly. They deserve recognition. Trade Prince Ven, who had become humanity's ally after profitable partnerships, added his voice. The Aurelian Commerce Guild votes in favor. Humanity brings fresh thinking that benefits us all. Not everyone agreed. Warlord Krax, who had never forgiven his humiliation, opposed vigorously. They are too young, too inexperienced. They will make mistakes that cost lives, Archonzile countered. Every species makes mistakes. At least humans learn from theirs quickly. High scientist Mara had changed her opinion of humanity over the years. Human medical researchers working with Lanthian scientists had produced breakthroughs that benefited both species. I vote in favor of humanity's elevation. They have earned their place. The debate lasted hours. Finally, Oracle Prime called for a formal vote. The question was simple. Should humanity be granted 8th position in the top 10? The votes came in slowly. Guardian Thane voted yes. Matriarch Sarah voted yes. Trade Prince Ven voted yes. High Scientist Mara voted yes. Archonzile voted yes. Emperor Vaxen voted no. Warlord Krax voted no. Overmind Nexus voted no. Representative Cora abstained. 5 in favor, 3 against, 1 abstention. The measure passed. Kyle felt the weight of the galaxy settle on his shoulders as the new rankings appeared. Position 10, Guardian Thane of the Sentinel Order position. 9, Archonzile of the Dominion position, the Raid Ambassador. Kyle Morrison representing Humanity position 7, High Scientist. Mara of the Lanthian Ascendancy position. 6, Trade Prince Ven of the Aurelian Commerce Guild position. 5, Matriarch Sarah of the Elysian Federation position 4. Emperor Vaxen of the Star, Throne position 3. Representative Cora of the Mindshare. Collective position 2. Overmind Nexus of the Silicon Collective position. 1 vacant pending council-wide election. The session adjourned. Kyle walked slowly back to his office, trying to process what had happened. Humanity had entered the top 10. In less than a decade, they had achieved what most species couldn't accomplish in 1,000 years. His communicator chimed. Admiral Daniel Hayes appeared on the screen, calling from Earth. Kyle, every city on the planet is celebrating. They think we've won some kind of victory. Kyle shook his head. We haven't won anything, Daniel. We've been given an enormous responsibility. Half the galaxy will see us as heroes who represent change and progress. The other half will see us as threats to the established order, and we still don't know what crisis Oracle Prime was preparing us for. Hayes nodded slowly. So what do we do? Kyle looked out at Unity Prime, at the thousands of ships from hundreds of worlds. Somewhere out there in the vast darkness between stars, the future was being written. Challenges would come. Enemies would rise. Mistakes would be made. We do what humans have always done, Kyle said finally. We adapt. We learn from every failure. We build alliances with those who share our values, and we prove that leadership isn't about age or military might or ancient wisdom. It's about having the courage to do what's right even when it's difficult. And if we fail? Hayes asked. Kyle smiled slightly. Then we'll fail trying to make the galaxy better than we found it. That's more than most civilizations can claim. The transmission ended. Kyle turned back to his desk where reports waited about trade agreements, colony development, and defense protocols. The work never ended. 3 years had passed since humanity's first appearance before the Galactic Council. Earth had changed dramatically in that short time. Trade agreements brought alien technology that revolutionized human industry. 3 new colony worlds sprouted in nearby star systems, each one growing faster than anyone expected. The human fleet expanded from 50 ships to nearly 200. Though this was still tiny compared to the great powers, Admiral Daniel Hayes commanded the expansion from Unity Station, a new human embassy built in orbit around Unity Prime. He had been promoted twice and now oversaw all of humanity's military operations beyond the solar system. The job exhausted him, but he wouldn't trade it for anything. Humanity was finally taking its place among the stars. Kyle Morrison had become Earth's permanent representative to the Council. He attended every session, studied every debate, and slowly built relationships with other species. He learned that galactic politics moved slowly. Species that lived for thousands of years didn't rush decisions. But Kyle was patient. He waited for the right moment to advance. Humanity's position. That moment came on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Kyle was reviewing trade proposals when alarms began blaring. Throughout Unity Prime, emergency signals flashed across every screen. Something major was happening. He rushed to the council chamber and found it already filling with concerned delegates. Warlord Krax of the Vryn Empire stood at the center of the chamber, his massive form radiating aggression. Around him, holographic displays showed Vryn warships entering the neutral buffer zone, a region of space that had been demilitarized for over 500 years. Oracle Prime manifested, their presence crackling with unusual intensity. Warlord Krax explained this violation of galactic law. Your forces have invaded 17 neutral star systems without council authorization. Krax's voice boomed through the chamber. These systems harbor pirates who attack Vryn trade convoys. I petitioned the council for action 6 times over the past decade. Each time you delayed and debated while my people suffered. I have taken matters into my own hands. The buffer zone is now under Vryn control. Chaos erupted in the chamber. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages. The translator system struggled to keep up. Kyle watched carefully, noting which species seemed surprised and which had known this was coming. Trade Prince Ven spoke urgently. This is unacceptable. The buffer zone protects trade routes for all species. If the Vryn control it, they control commerce throughout this entire sector. Emperor Vaxen added his ancient voice. You violate treaties that have stood for millennia. This cannot be permitted, Krax sneered. Then stop me. Send your fleets. Declare war on the Vryn Empire. But remember, we maintain the largest military force in the galaxy. We have crushed rebellions on 1,000 worlds. What makes you think you can defeat us? It was a calculated gamble, and Kyle saw it immediately. The Vryn were essential to galactic stability. They provided military support for dozens of council operations. Without them, countless minor conflicts would erupt across the galaxy. Krax was betting that the council needed him more than he needed them. Matriarch Sarah attempted to mediate. Warlord, let us negotiate. Withdraw your forces and we will address the piracy issue properly. I have waited long enough, Krax replied. My forces remain. If the council wishes to challenge this, they know where to find me. The session descended into argument. Trade Prince Ven proposed economic sanctions, but others pointed out that the Vryn were largely self-sufficient. Guardian Thane offered to deploy defensive platforms, but his forces were designed to protect, not attack. Archon Zyle suggested using drones, but that would take weeks to organize. Hours passed without resolution. The council, for all its power, seemed paralyzed. Each member of the top 10 had tremendous strength in their specialty, but none could directly counter a determined military aggressor without triggering a war that would cost billions of lives. Kyle sat in the lower tiers, listening to the debate. He thought about Oracle Prime's warning 3 years ago, a crisis that would reshape galactic power. This had to be it. The question was, what could humanity do about it? He studied the tactical displays showing the buffer zone. 17 star systems. 12 different species called those systems home. The Vryn occupation was already causing casualties. Refugee ships fled toward council space, but many were turned away at borders. Nobody wanted to provoke the Vryn by harboring their victims. Kyle made a decision that would change everything. He activated his communicator and called Admiral Daniel Hayes. Daniel, I need the entire human fleet ready to move within 12 hours. Hayes sounded confused. Kyle, what's happening? We're not even involved in this crisis. We're about to be. Trust me. Kyle invoked an ancient council provision that few remembered existed. Any member species could propose a solution to an existential crisis, regardless of rank. He requested an emergency audience. To his surprise, Oracle Prime granted it immediately. Kyle stood before the council once more, with thousands of eyes watching. He could feel the skepticism in the room. Humanity ranked below the first 1,000 members. What could they possibly do about a crisis that had stumped the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy? Members of the council, I propose an alternative to war. Humanity will intervene in the buffer zone, but not as conquerors. We will deploy our fleet to evacuate civilians from the conflict zones. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Warlord Krax laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. You have 200 ships. I have 1 million. What do you think you can accomplish? Kyle met his gaze. We will establish a humanitarian corridor. Human vessels will evacuate refugees from systems where fighting has broken out. We will transport them to safety in council space. Archon Zyle spoke up. And when the Vryn attack your ships? They have shown no mercy to others who interfered. Then the Vryn will have to explain to the entire galaxy why they fired on unarmed civilians and the humanitarian workers trying to save them. Kyle replied calmly. Warlord Krax, will you give that order? Will you cement your reputation as someone who murders refugees? The chamber fell silent. Kyle continued. We are not threatening the Vryn Empire. We are not challenging their military power. We are simply standing between your forces and innocent people. What happens next is your choice, Warlord. It was a desperate gambit. Kyle was betting that even cracks wouldn't want to be seen as a monster who kills civilians and aid workers. If he was wrong, the entire human fleet could be destroyed. Trade Prince Ven studied Kyle with newfound respect. You are forcing a choice. Attack humanitarian ships and lose all political legitimacy, or allow the evacuations and watch your occupation lose its hostages. Matriarch Sarah smiled slightly. The young species understands leverage better than we gave them credit for. Oracle Prime called for a vote. Does the Council authorize humanity's humanitarian intervention? Guardian Thane voted yes immediately. The Sentinel Order recognizes moral courage. We will provide logistical support for the evacuation. Matriarch Sarah followed. The Elysian Federation will mediate between humanity and the Vryn to establish safe passage rules. One by one, 8 of the top 10 members voted in favor. Only Warlord Krax and Overmind Nexus voted against. The resolution passed. Kyle immediately contacted Admiral Hayes. Daniel, you're authorized. Get every ship we have into that buffer zone. Evacuate as many people as possible. Within hours, human vessels began appearing in the contested systems. The flagship Liberty, under Hayes' direct command, led the operation. Human ships moved carefully, broadcasting their humanitarian mission on all frequencies. They positioned themselves between Vryn military forces and civilian population centers. The tension was unbearable. Vryn warships tracked human vessels with their weapons. One order from cracks and the human fleet would be vaporized in seconds. But the order never came. Days turned into weeks. Human ships worked tirelessly, ferrying millions of refugees to safety. Species that had never heard of humanity before saw humans risking their lives to save strangers. News spread across the galaxy. The newest council member was doing what ancient civilizations would not. Admiral Hayes coordinated from the Liberty's bridge, operating on minimal sleep. His crew worked 18-hour shifts. They faced constant danger, but none of them complained. They knew they were part of something important. On the 19th day of the operation, something unexpected happened. On the Vryn homeworld, protests began. Vryn citizens, inspired by humanity's courage, started questioning their government's aggressive policies. They asked why their empire needed to conquer the buffer zone. They demanded explanations for civilian casualties. The protests spread. Within days, millions of Vryn took to the streets. Their species had a warrior culture, but they also valued honor. What honor was there in attacking humanitarian workers? What glory came from killing refugees? Warlord Krax found himself facing an impossible choice. He could order his fleet to destroy the human ships, but that would trigger full-scale rebellion at home. Or he could withdraw and accept defeat. On the 20th day, Vryn forces began pulling back from the buffer zone. Krax never officially surrendered, but his ships retreated to their own space. The crisis ended without a single shot fired between human and Vryn forces.